Alright, so as I was saying, I have never seen a storm this scary before. This was like one of the scariest storms I ever dealt with in my entire lifetime. And this was one of the most scariest times of my entire life. I have actually never been this scared before in my whole life of what was going to happen next or this was going to happen. Yeah, this was the day where a lot of people on Long Island lost their homes and a lot of businesses were flooded. A lot of people had to raise their homes like along the South Shore to prevent another Sandy destroying their home in the future. Yeah, a lot of homes were destroyed that day from the floods. When the ocean came in, a lot of businesses were destroyed and other buildings. A lot of people lost everything, and a lot of lives were lost that day in the entire Northeast. Yeah, a lot of homes were lost and a lot of businesses were lost all along the Northeast region. And a lot of people were dead from the storm. It was one of the deadliest storms the Northeast has ever seen. Sandy was a complete menace of a hurricane. It's an absolute menace. It was definitely a haunted Halloween for us, alright. It was definitely a Frankenstorm. No doubt about that. Yeah, we were sitting in the dark in the living room, hearing the wind that night for several hours, and it was just pitch black, and you could hear the scary noises of the wind like outside the window. To paint the picture for you, everyone's like huddled up in blankets, and it's just completely dark, and we only had like lanterns and flashlights to give us light. And it was just completely pitch black in the whole house. Yeah, that was really scary. And then I went to bed at like 11 o'clock that night, and I was actually wide awake that night. I couldn't sleep until like 2 in the morning. I did not go to sleep until 2 a.m. because I was actually scared that night, believe it or not. I did not go to sleep until 2 a.m. because I'm laying in bed, right? In my pitch black bedroom, and I could hear the wind screaming like out the window. And the wind gusts were like at 90 miles an hour, over 90 miles an hour. And that's what I could hear. I could hear the wind screaming at greater gust. And I'm like left wide awake because of it. And I was like pretty scared that night. I have never been that scared before in my entire life. And I was not excited to wake up to what was. I was not excited to wake up to see what the storm left us the next morning. And I woke up that morning. The next morning, it was my parents' unlucky 13th anniversary, believe it or not. Yeah, unlucky 13. And I go into my backyard only to find out that my back fence was knocked over. Like a small portion of my fence was knocked over. And I woke up and we had no power whatsoever. And my dad actually set up the generator that morning so we could watch TV and all that stuff. And make sure we have heat in the house because once Sandy left, a cold front like rolled in and the temperature just dropped like a rock. We started having temperatures like go into the 40s and the 30s. If that wasn't bad enough, if you go to Virginia or West Virginia, they actually had snow from Sandy. And they had like 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts in that area. They had like blizzards and all this snow and ice coming down. Yeah, it was really bad in West Virginia. They had to deal with a bunch of blizzards from Sandy. Yeah, it's like really rare for a hurricane to produce snow, but this is a hurricane that actually brought cold temperatures to us. Like, once Sandy left, the temperatures just dropped like a rock, and the cold temperatures came here, where we started seeing temperatures fall into the 40s or 30s. We were in the living room freezing, and my dad had to make sure we had a working generator to make sure we had heat and everything. We had to make sure we had a generator for sure, because it was really bad. And after he hooked up the generator, my friend Nick came over, and we were actually doing homework at the same dining room table. And he decided to stay over for a few hours, even though we didn't have any power. Yeah, he stayed for a little bit, and we hung out for a little bit. Especially in a dark time like this, we could still have a good time, like, as friends. Yeah, even though we're living in a dark time, we were living in a dark time like Sandy, that doesn't stop us. That doesn't stop me from having a good time with my friend, like, while he's over here, hanging out with me. And believe it or not, I'd rather take a power outage than lose my whole house completely. It was much better than what the South had to deal with. But I felt really bad for those people. I was completely devastated for those people the next day. I have never felt so devastated after a hurricane hit. Yeah, this was much worse than Irene. Without question. Yeah, Sandy was definitely much worse than Irene, which happened in the year prior. Yeah, so my friend Nick came over for a few hours and he left. And then the next day it was Halloween. It was Wednesday, October 31st, 2012. And school is still closed. Yeah, school is closed for like a whole week. I didn't go back for like over a week. That on the day of the hurricane, they called my house to say that the school was closed regarding Hurricane Sandy. So, with there being no school, we actually trick-or-treated in the afternoon because we didn't know what to do ourselves because we had no power and everything. And with school being out, and with there being nothing to do, me and my friend Nick and my brothers, we all went trick-or-treating in the afternoon. And I was actually Frankenstein that year. And we got our trick-or-treating done in the afternoon. Like, we started at like 1 o'clock and we finished around 3-ish. And we still had an overcast in our area. But it wasn't as bad as what we had with Sandy. The peak day was Monday, October 29th, but the storm was gone. But we were in a long, cloudy streak. So we got our trick-or-treating done in the afternoon because it didn't really pay to sit in the house without power and with there being no school. So what do you do on Halloween when you don't have power and you don't have school? You go trick-or-treating in the afternoon. Like it's the weekend where it's completely fine. Yeah, why sit in the house all day when you can get your trick-or-treating done in the afternoon if Halloween falls on a weekend or whatever? And that night, me and my family had family movie night, and we were watching We were actually watching Scared Shrekless in the living room on ABC7 because we were having the generator connected to our TV where we could watch TV in the living room, and we watched Scared Shrekless in the living room, and some other Halloween movie I can't remember. So we watched Scared Shrekless on ABC7 and all that. And that night, my dad goes out in his old Saturn, and he waits on the gas line to get more fuel for the generator. And he was actually on that line all night. So my dad spent Halloween night, late that night, on a line to get gas for the generator, and he was like on that line like all night. And he didn't get home until the crack of dawn. Until he finally got his gas for the generator. Yeah, that was terrible what happened with my dad. He was like on one of those long gas lines at the gas station to get more fuel for our generator. So we can have heat in our house and stuff. My dad was on that line like all night, and he like got on that line at like 10 o'clock, and he didn't get home until like 5 in the morning. It was like a huge line for that in that gas station. Yeah, that's what happened after Sandy. Like every single night, the gas stations have like these big lines of cars of people who need to get fuel for their generator in order to have heat and stuff in their house. And they're trapped on that line for several hours. Yeah, this is the type of hell we had to go through with Sandy. And the next day, it was Thursday, November 1st. And nothing really happened that day that was interesting. So we still had no power. The story was the same. And then Friday, November 2nd, we actually had our friends come over again. Even though we had no power, and we were watching Looney Tunes Back in Action. My friend Nick came over, and so was my mom's best friend and her kids. And we all hung out in the living room for a few hours. And we watched Looney Tunes Back in Action because we had the generator hooking up our TV once again. And we watched Looney Tunes Back in Action that afternoon. It was like a little hurricane get-together, like a little post-hurricane get-together. Even through these dark times, you could still have fun with your friends and still invite them over. Even though you don't have power. It's like we need some... Like, even though we don't have power and we're like left in the dark, we still need to have some positivity somewhere, so we invite our friends over. Yeah, we try to be as positive as possible and try to keep ourselves occupied after Sandy, even though we were living through these hard times. And even though we were freezing in our own house. And everyone was huddled up in blankets. That was the nightmare we had to go through. And we had to sleep in the living room like every single night. Because if we went into our bedrooms, we would freeze all night long. And it would be nothing but pitch black. And we also had a portable DVD player in the room to watch movies. And I remember we were watching Rugrats Go Wild one night. Like after Sandy hit. Yeah, that was like one of the first times I ever saw the movie Rugrats Go Wild. So